I met Peter and Gail quite early after my arrival in Rochester in 1979. I came to be the organizer at Metro ACT, and of course Peter and Gail were so active in peace and justice work at that period of time. And over the decades, I have found so much to admire and respect and learn about Peter and Gail, because it's almost impossible to separate their deep connection. But the unending and unbending commitment to deep principles of social, economic, and political justice have influenced this community of activists and in our area in profound ways. And today is a day to be very grateful and celebrate as we go forward and work together to continue this kind of work. Thank you so much, Peter.
I've known Dr. Mott's family through friendship with the family for 40 years. I wanted to relate one story, one shared experience with Dr. Mott. It was in Canada with Jimmy and Dr. Mott and a Canadian fellow and we paddled, we had a paddle trip. We went up a river and camped overnight. And it was a wonderful trip. It was a great experience to have that with Jim and his dad. We reached a lake called Lac d'Argy, and I remember gliding out onto the lake. It was a little bit overcast, and it was completely silent, and it was a rare experience. And I wanted to just tie that a little bit to my thoughts of Dr. Mott, and that he was not a loud person, and he was not loud, but he was heard, and he was heard so well. And his passions were varied, and the ones that I know of were, of course, his passion for healthcare and healthcare justice. But as I say, varied. There was also a passion for James Bond films and for, as we heard today, the Buffalo Bills and just fun, good nature. It just was a grand and special time to have known him and to know and be so close to his family.
I hope you'll excuse me for reading, but I fear my heart and tongue will become hopelessly entangled without the aid of the printed word. So thank you. Peter Mott, MD. Peter dearly loved his wife, his children, his patients, and his many friends, whom he'd known for years or who had just met on a walk. He was interested in all sorts of things: music, politics, science, nature, humanity. He was a voracious reader, attentive listener, and most of all, an active doer. Together, he and Gail journeyed to many countries in turmoil to aid with their physical presence, their money, their know-how. Though they spoke not the language, they created lifelong friends. At home, Peter continued to work for the sick, the suffering, the downtrodden. He set up first aid stations throughout Rochester and worked with others to provide food, clothing, housing, to help get our homeless through our bitter Rochester winters. Peter Mott cared for you, for me, for whoever you are. Thank you, dear Peter. We all send our love to a doctor who knew no borders.
And I've known Peter Mott since I was a kid. And I just wanted to say that my experience with Peter was that he always had a wonder and a hope, and that he had a humor in his heart. Thank you.
But I did want to say a few things, and it's nothing, really erudite, but some memories that I have. And some of the strongest ones are becoming aware of Archbishop Romero and meeting Gail and Peter and going, to the marches in New York City, and then flying on the same plane with Peter. I think Gail was there too, to Fort Benning, Georgia, for the School of the Americas protest demonstrations. I went more than once. But of course, the first time was really memorable, much more, because they had not yet closed the gates. They had not yet put the barbed wire up. So there we marched in 2 by 2, holding the names of the people who had been murdered by the folks who were attending the School of the Americas or had attended, and the drums, keeping cadence with the caskets that were walking onto the campus, and then turning a corner, and there were the buses waiting for us, and arrested us. So I remember going with Peter on the plane and driving, to the gates of Fort Benning. So that's my comment.
Just being radicals together, right?
I guess that's what it was.
Understanding.
When I first met Peter in 2011 at a Band of Rebels protest in Rochester, what I remember most was his beatific smile and a glow around his face, almost like a medieval painting, and his gentle demeanor, even while fiercely opposing the banks that had caused the Great Recession or standing against U.S. depredations in Central America. Although Peter was already showing signs of the illness that gradually reduced his mobility, he and Gail appeared faithfully at Band of Rebels' weekly protests in all kinds of weather: snow, extreme cold, ice, and rain. As his illness progressed, the glow never left his face. It was as if God shone through him no matter what was happening. As I got to know Peter and Gail better, serving on the steering committee of the Rochester Committee on Latin America, I realized I've never known anyone quite like Peter. His backbone of steel, fighting for the just world he believed was possible, while being quiet and calm, presenting his views, and never angry. My experience with activists was that they could have a lot of ego and be somewhat overbearing. Not Peter. He made his points with strength while being someone you wanted to be friends with. He is definitely my candidate for sainthood. I miss his wisdom and joy.
And I only have one thing to say. Peter and Gail have always been my models. And this service really just exuded why. They are such wonderful people, and it was such a wonderful service, a wonderful story of a life well lived, and I feel grateful to be here to hear it.
Postscript by Seamus Heaney. And sometime make the time to drive out west into County Clare along the flaggy shore in September or October, when the wind and the light are working off each other, so that the ocean on one side is wild with foam and glitter, and inland among stones the surface of a slate gray lake is lit by the earth lightning of a flock of swans, their feathers ruffed and ruffling white on white, their fully grown, headstrong-looking heads tucked or cresting on busy underwater. Useless to think you'll park and capture it more thoroughly. You are neither here nor there, a hurry through which known and strange things pass as big soft buffetings come at the car sideways and catch the heart off guard and blow it open.